Whenever I talk about the Tudor in-house movements, I always receive comments from a small but vocal minority claiming Tudor movements aren't actually made in-house, but rather made by a movement manufacturer called Kenissi. So let's talk about it. Are Tudor movements actually made in-house? If you're new here, hi, my name is Brittany, and this channel is dedicated to the beauty and awesomeness of timepieces. If you've been following this channel, you know I'm a big Tudor fangirl. I have the Tudor Black Bay 54 and the Black Bay 58, and I'd love to add a few more Tudor watches to the collection if my budget would just allow it. I think they're in this incredibly unique position of offering mid-level, mid-priced luxury watches with all the resources of the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation. So if you're a bit newer to watches, Tudor was founded by the same person who founded Rolex, Hans Wilsdorf. And he created Tudor to be the more everyman's alternative to Rolex by using Rolex parts, cases, crowns, clasps, but not Rolex movements, opting instead for off-the-shelf movements to keep the price point lower. Fast forward to present day, where Tudor has become a massive player in the mid-tier luxury watch market, with all of their newer releases boasting an in-house movement, COSC certification, and they're even moving into METAS certification at an incredible price point. So, how? I think we should first define what an in-house movement is. So this is a movement that has been produced by a watch manufacturer within one of its own facilities rather than outsourced to another company. Now I think when we hear this, we think of what I call the true in-house watchmaker. So a watchmaker or manufacturer who actually makes all the parts and components of a watch or a movement, like Roger Smith. Or I was recently in Glashütte and went to the Nomos movement manufacturing facility where they literally make, on site, almost every component of their movements. But there's a second way to accomplish this, what I call the corporate in-house. And I'm thinking of the big industry titans like Swatch, Richemont, Rolex. They will have a case style, bracelet, movement manufacturer that they own but isn't necessarily on site, but they are owned by the wider entity, which makes it in-house. And I don't think this is incorrectly classed as in-house. It's just not necessarily what comes to our minds when we hear those words. And this is what Tudor is doing through Kenissi. So look at this. This big red building here is Tudor Watch Manufacturing HQ. This is where the Tudor watches get assembled, run quality control tests, and this gray building just behind it is actually attached to the Tudor manufacturing facility, and this is their movement manufacturer, Kenissi. Now, I've not been to Le Locle, Switzerland, or Rolex or Tudor HQ. I'm just an internet detective, but my wonderful, fabulous friend Adrian Barker has, and he made a whole video about it. So check out his video if you want to see some of the behind the scenes of Tudor and Kenissi manufacturing, but only after you watch this video in its entirety, of course. Kenissi was founded by Tudor. In 2010, Tudor began an ambitious project to develop their own mechanical movements, and at Baselworld 2015, they revealed their first in-house Calibre in the North Flag. The following year, they created Kenissi to oversee the development and production of their movements. They soon brought on other partners, as the Kenissi website says. This is corporate for they started making movements for other manufacturers. Kenissi now makes movements for Breitling, Chanel with the J12, Tag Heuer, Norqain, but this is still a company founded by and created by Tudor. Tudor remains the majority owner, with Chanel being a minority stakeholder owning 20%. And, side tangent, Chanel is low-key heavily investing in horology. So are Tudor movements actually in-house? Yes. Technically, yes. But maybe not in the romantic way that watch collectors want them to be in-house. They're making solid, well-finished, functional watches at a price point that almost doesn't make sense for how much watch you're getting. But that's because they have the economy of scale through Kenissi movement suppliers that they founded and own, and they have the resources of the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation. This isn't a mom-and-pop business working out of a cottage in the Jura Mountains. This is an efficient, calculated investment in movement manufacturing. So I was gonna end this video there, but I've been researching and digging into this topic for quite a while now, and I think I still have more to say. So the longer I've been steeping in this, the more I've been realizing in-house movements aren't what we think they are. They aren't what comes to mind when we think of in-house. So the term in-house has only been used the past couple of decades. Even in the 1990s, brands weren't positioning their products based on whether the movements were made internally or not. My first thoughts are Patek and Lemania, and Patek AP, Vacheron Constantin using JLC movements. Even Rolex was still using Zenith movements in the Daytona, which didn't move in-house until the year 2000. This has been a really common practice in most of the history of watchmaking. Now, there's a couple of reasons why brands started leaning into the in-house movements. Reason one was the rise in popularity of quartz watches, and more recently, wearables such as Apple Watch. Luxury brands needed to differentiate themselves and the craft of mechanical watchmaking. And two, the volatility and lack of control when using third-party movements. For example, ETA and Valjoux are owned by the Swatch Group, Miyota by Citizen, and it's a risk importing those movements and not being in control of all aspects of the manufacturing process. One of the best examples is Nomos and their Alpha movement. For about a decade, they were using the ETA 7001, but as access to these movements became a bit hairy, the brand instead opted to make similar movements but within their own production facilities, and of course decorating it and all the extra fun stuff that comes with in-house movements. I'm really trying to have a mental shift on the superiority I feel or associate with in-house versus ETA or Miyota, because I think this is more clever marketing than a superior movement in 90% of cases. Even when I think of, say, the Patek Philippe 5970, do I think less of it because it is fitted with the Lemania base Calibre? Or the Patek 5070 with the base Lemania 2310? Not at all. I don't think less of these at all. The Lemania 2310 was also the base movement of the iconic Omega Speedmaster 321. Or then we have heavily modified Bosch movements, like the Christopher Ward Belcanto movement, which is a heavily modified Sellita SW200-1, to the point where you're like, that's an SW200? I think especially with the mid-tier in-house movements. So we're not talking, high finishing Geneva seal, mid-tier in-house movements. The biggest benefit to these is some of the capacities like longer power reserves, Gauss, shock resistance, and COSC and METAS certified performance. But still, you can get some of these things with an upgraded Bosch caliber like the COSC grade Sellita SW200. Where am I trying to go with this? Bring it home, Brittany. I guess I'm trying to say in-house isn't as important within the mid-tier luxury game, especially when brands like Tudor are basically mass-producing movements. In-house is still my preference because of the slight performance improvements, especially with Tudor aiming for more METAS-approved watches. But in-house comes with a host of new problems such as servicing, and a lot of the in-house movement designs aren't all that different from their off-the-shelf counterparts. The designs are quite comparable, but just made in-house. I think times have changed in the watch world. It isn't the 20th century anymore where different maisons would make different components and sell to each other and specialize in different things, and that was commonplace. Watchmaking and consumer motivation for buying a watch has changed. I don't think the term in-house is going anywhere, but I want to be slower to see them as more premium, if that makes sense. Hi guys, and welcome to the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now, before we finish, there's just a couple of things I need to say. There will be some names on the screen right now. These are the amazing, fabulous, wonderful Pope tier patrons who keep the lights on here at Gringa HQ. Thank you so much to all tier patrons for supporting my weird little channel, but a special big thank you to the Pope tier patrons. And something else I just wanted to say, this video has been months of research, digging in. I really hope the things I said and the way I said it didn't come across as horribly snobby. Even just as I was editing this and listening to myself, I was thinking, I could see how someone could misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying mid-tier luxury brands shouldn't try to make in-house movements. It's a wonderful, ambitious achievement, and a lot of these mid-tier luxury movements are still innovating in the space. I'm thinking of Grand Seiko and the Spring Drive, Omega adopting the coaxial escapement. What I was trying to say through this video and calling myself out on is the superiority I often feel about in-house over off the shelf. I especially wanted to explore in-house movements that are only in-house because a conglomerate or a giant business swallowed up a movement manufacturer, or they're kind of mass producing a thing and maybe they're being, I don't know. Does that make sense? But I'm also not trying to say there's anything wrong with mass-produced movements or things either. It's how brands are able to keep prices down. Tudor is ambitious as frick. What they're doing is ambitious and crazy and moving things forward. But I just think the way brands can use in-house doesn't necessarily line up with what we think of as in-house in our heads. Maybe that was just me. I had a different idea than how a lot of these bigger, more mainstream brands use in-house. But still, what Tudor's offering at the price point is insane, especially as they go after Medass. Craziness. Anyways, I just wanted to call myself out for feeling superior about these certain things. This video is reminding myself to not take it too seriously. I hope you all keep enjoying your watches, enjoying the movements, and I hope manufacturers keep churning out more and more ambitious things that get us excited for watchmaking. All right, I've talked too long. Thanks, patrons. Thanks, everyone who watched.